Welcome to Judgement Time, the show where we see if characters are redeemable. I say characters this time instead of villains, because today I'm going to be digging into a character who's generally viewed as a hero, the ever-benevolent Princess Zelda herself. I know what you might be thinking. What actions could she have possibly done to be considered irredeemable? Well, dear viewers, let me tell you. Her actions have some of the worst consequences we see in the timeline. And so, without further ado, I'm Cornelius Belmont, and this is Judgement Time. Thanks for watching the video. If you like my content, please like and subscribe to the channel. I've recently started a Patreon. More on that at the end. A special thanks to these people for letting me use their assets. Spoilers ahead for the following games. Let's get into it. During the events of Ocarina of Time, we meet the current Princess of Hyrule, Princess Zelda. Her father had just finished establishing peace from a very bloody Hyrulean civil war, successfully uniting the three tribes of the Goron, Zora, and Kokiri under a single banner. At the same time, negotiations were being opened with the Gerudo Desert tribe on the borders of Hyrule Kingdom. While not stated directly in game, it is clear that the royal family won the conflict by holding their trump card, the holy relic of the gods, the Triforce. Those events are important to bring up because they all happened within the princess's lifetime. Indeed, the scars of war were still very fresh. The story from the Deku Sprout states that Link was delivered to the Kokiri during that war, and Link and Zelda are about the same age. And so it is easy to conclude that the war was still happening at least when Zelda was born. This means that the princess was raised with knowledge of the immediate past, and she clearly holds the knowledge of how to access the Triforce, as she is able to present that knowledge to Link directly. The other thing of note about her is that she has visions. These visions are what tipped her off to Ganondorf's fake alliance with the kingdom, as well as suspicion that he may be after the Triforce, and so she sent Link to investigate and recover the spiritual stones. Besides that though, we see that she is very trusting of Link, a Kokiri who snuck into her castle to speak to her while bypassing the guards. Later in life, we would see how she took the fate of the kingdom very seriously, believing wholeheartedly in the legends and myths of the kingdom. While hiding as Sheik, she would use the goddess heart to teach Link songs to help him travel around, as well as giving him advice and information on how to proceed. And of course at the end, her compassion causes her to send Link back in time, feeling that he had been robbed of his childhood. So with that rundown of her character, you might be asking what she could have possibly done wrong at all. Did she commit any actions that might be irredeemable? Well, I'm glad that you asked. That's right, treason. Princess Zelda recruited an agent for her own agenda, all with the intent of sabotaging the peace talks with the Gerudo. It doesn't matter that their king was a horrible person, that his mothers were brainwashing soldiers, or that he had already committed war crimes, and that he was actively plotting betrayal. Diplomacy is what was happening, and there are laws and processes involving the actions of the reigning monarch that the king takes, not the princess. In fact, she very clearly goes behind her father's back in doing this, and has her bodyguard Impa teach a secret and sacred song to Link, a song that may as well be a key to the kingdom, and then she sent her agent on his way. This is treason. Now granted, she is very young, maybe 10 or 11 if I were to guess, but that really doesn't matter here. She is the princess, and she is abusing her power and privilege to do what she wants. And what she wants is to gain access to the sacred realm, so she can correct a problem that she sees that apparently her father cannot. Impa goes along with this too. But to be fair, That makes sense since the Sheikah served the royal family without question, and are all on board with doing very shady things for the sake of the kingdom. Consider this though. Had Princess Zelda not tried to interfere with Ganondorf's plan, not recruited Link to collect the stones for her, and not given Link the final key to the Temple of Time, Ganondorf's plan would have effectively failed to secure the Triforce. It may have resulted in a war with Gerudo, but ultimately it would have been a war he could not win, because the royal family would have continued to hold the trump card. Sure, there could have been other fallout. Perhaps the Gorons would have starved, Lord Jabu Jabu may have died, but again, Ganondorf would not be accessing the Sacred Realm. At least not without having to jump through a lot more hoops. Though she had good intentions, Princess Zelda basically handed the Triforce over to Hyrule's greatest enemy, and all because she thought she knew better than her father. If having Link collect the spiritual stones behind her father's back wasn't bad enough, she then doubled down on her bad decision making by giving up a priceless family heirloom. Before we get to that, we should make note that Link was actively disrupting Ganondorf's plans with the Gorons and Zora. We do not exactly know what triggered the assault on Hyrule Castle, but there is a very real possibility such hostility came about by Link thwarting his plans. As such, he may have killed the king, and was chasing the princess to get the Ocarina of Time from her, when she managed to get away thanks to the help of Impa. During that escape, she makes her second and very unfortunate mistake. With Link in possession of the 3 spiritual stones, and making his way back to the castle, he was just in time to witness Zelda's escape. She saw him while clutching the Ocarina of Time, and then she chose to toss it to Link where it would end up falling into the moat. Ganondorf would then confront Link having lost track of the princess, interrogate the boy, and then finally let him go. What's important to realize here is that Ganondorf had failed to capture the princess, which means that the Ocarina of Time would have been safe in her possession. As we see later in the game, she is more than capable of evading the Gerudo King, and so keeping the Ocarina of Time hidden seems more than feasible. It was only the act of entrusting it to Link that Ganondorf was able to enter the Sacred Realm. In short, Princess Zelda had Link gather the stones, and then gave him the key he needed to open the Door of Time. The princess was gambling too. She was betting on Link being the hero capable of drawing the Master Sword, and she was right. However, in doing so, she truly gave Link everything he needed to enter the Sacred Realm, where the Triforce was sealed. At the same time, she was also opening the way for literally anybody else to follow him. Granted, she may have thought that the young hero could fight off such a threat with the Master Sword, but it was still by her hand that access was given, and we know what happened afterward. Ganondorf entered the Sacred Realm, touched the Triforce gaining absolute power, and used that to lay waste to the kingdom, taking it for himself. And so again, I have to say that Princess Zelda's actions led to this tragedy. Things are not looking good for her. From this point, we follow the adult timeline. Link goes into stasis for 7 years in the Temple of Light with Rauru. In that time, Zelda trains under Impa, becoming Sheik, possibly using the Triforce of Wisdom to mask her trail and keep her hidden. Link awakens, has the Master Sword, and Zelda guides him on how to save Hyrule. It goes spectacularly. Success after success. The sages are awakened and they fight back against the Gerudo King. She then reveals to Link that she is indeed Princess Zelda, lifting the disguise so that she can give him the Arrows of Light, the very arrows that are needed to defeat Ganondorf, all while getting captured within mere minutes of doing so. Link then travels to Ganondorf's castle and eventually defeats him. What happens afterwards is the important part. Another big error on the part of Princess Zelda's decisions. She uses the Ocarina of Time to send Link back in time so he could live out his childhood. This act, however, would fork the timeline, and actively remove not only Link, but the Master Sword from this point going forward. This was about the biggest blunder she could have possibly made outside of making the Sacred Realm accessible in the first place. Keep in mind that her solution to fix the problem involved trapping Ganondorf in that Sacred Realm with the Triforce of Power. The Holy Relic was in pieces, and while courage and wisdom were within her grasp, the means to make wishes with the Holy Relic were not. That is not the part I am trying to focus on though, because in performing the seemingly innocent act of sending Link back in time, she also doomed her kingdom by removing the Master Sword and the hero with it. It is only by luck that this act did not remove the Triforce of Courage as well, as in response to the hero suddenly disappearing, it shattered into 8 pieces and fell across the land. Perhaps that is the first real sign that she had just made a critical error. Sometime later, maybe 100 years or so, Ganondorf would break free from the corrupted Sacred Realm. The hero would fail to appear, and he would have his way with the land until divine intervention would step in and flood the land in order to stop him. It is worth mentioning that the goddess Hylia put in place a mechanism to safeguard the land a very long time ago. Princess Zelda broke that mechanism, and as a result, countless people died. Not just her people, mind you, people all across the world. After all, that flood only left the highest points in Hyrule visible as islands. But that flooding did not stop at the borders of Hyrule, it flooded the entire world. Still, it is not fair to blame the entire flood on her, even if her actions ended up leading to that outcome. But removing the hero and the Master's Sword is entirely on her. And so, that is the third big strike against her. Perhaps realizing the mistake that she had made, by sending Link and the Master Sword back to his childhood, we see evidence that she made an effort to correct the problem. But before I get into that, there is something worth bringing up, which is that generally characters in the Zelda timeline are unaware that the timeline exists at all. It is entirely likely that she was operating off a linear timeline thought process, similar to what we see in the Back to the Future movies, or at least the first one. And so she might have believed that changes to the past would reconstruct the timeline and change reality. It is also likely that our young hero of time was operating off the same idea, and that is why he told Zelda about Ganondorf's treachery in the final scene of the game. My point being that in both instances, Zelda and Link, their actions may have been under the impression they would be preventing the bad future they had witnessed. A future in which Castletown was destroyed and untold amounts of death had been inflicted over the kingdom. If we look at it from the view of Princess Zelda when she was doing this deed, it is entirely possible that her actions are basically suicidal, that she was taking an action for the greater good even if it meant undoing her own existence. Perhaps moments after sending Link away when she continued to exist, she would come to realize that time does not work the way she thought, and that her actions had just broken the world even more. Likewise, Link could have been making a similar choice when he chose to tell the young princess, thinking that he would wipe away the friends he had made as an adult in the service of building a better future. Perhaps someday I will drag the hero of time on my little show, but for now we are talking about Princess Zelda. For now, I am choosing to believe that Zelda sent Link back in time with the intent of leaving the option to rewrite history up to him. By returning to his childhood, he could either prevent the problem by finding a way to stop Ganondorf, or he could live his life freely, perhaps outside of Hyrule, knowing that a different version of him would pull the sword and wake up in 7 years. Her perception is wrong, of course. We all know that. But it is her perception that we need to consider when passing judgment. The moment that Link disappeared and she continued to exist meant that either Link did not significantly modify time, or that she was now in a time devoid of the hero. And so she began the means of fixing the problem. In the events of The Wind Waker, we see that there is a mechanism in place for creating a new hero, along with a new Master Sword that has been used in order to fight evil. I believe this was put in place by Princess Zelda after she confirmed that Link and the Master Sword were missing. with the Triforce of Courage shattered into 8 pieces. All that was left in her grasp was the Triforce of Wisdom, and so she set to work in her lifetime to create the means of fixing the problem. We don't know how many Sheikah were around. Ocarina of Time suggests that Impa was the last one, and yet in The Wind Waker we see evidence of their existence. It is my belief that the Sheikah under Princess Zelda, or perhaps Hylians under the guidance of Impa, constructed the Tower of the Gods. The tower itself resembles the Sheikah technology we see in Breath of the Wild, but more importantly, it seems to use a blue power source that is later revealed to be the Triforce of Wisdom. With courage in pieces, it would seem that Zelda was willing to give up her piece in order to power the tower, in hopes of creating a new hero when the time was right. She also worked to create a new Master Sword with the current awakened sages, which would perhaps explain why there are windows of the sages around the Master Sword in the castle. As I discussed in a previous video, 2 more sages were then added to the roster in order to imbue the sword with the power needed to fight evil, akin to the original Master Sword. This was the legacy of that Princess Zelda, left behind with her descendants and kingdom passing on the story of the hero of time. It isn't to say that she fixed the problems that she caused, but it shows that she did what she could. And when it comes to the judgment of a person's character, intent carries a lot of weight. Before I pass final judgment, I should bring up the recent video by Nintendo Black Crisis. He brings up the same Princess Zelda I am speaking about, and we just so happen to be working on related topics around the same time. Anyhow, when analyzing her actions with sending Link back in time, he drew conclusions that she did it out of compassion for him, as to where I'm drawing a conclusion that she was doing it for the greater good, potentially at the cost of undoing her own existence. In any case, we both reached similar conclusions as many other Zelda tubers have, that removing Link is what caused the tragedy that would ultimately lead to the flooding of Hyrule. And so here I have laid out the sins of Princess Zelda, each of which she did with good intentions. She undermined her father and put her own agent in play in order to access the Master Sword and Triforce. She later entrusted her agent with the Ocarina of Time, one of the keys needed to access the Holy Relic, and ultimately ended up giving access to Ganondorf. Then, after sealing the Great King of Evil away, she sent her agent back in time to either live out his life peacefully, or change the future to undo countless deaths. Ignorance does not excuse guilt, it merely explains tragedy. If we are going to play with monarchy, then we must accept the weight of the crown. Did Zelda commit the acts that led to the destruction of the land, and ultimately the flooding of Hyrule? Yes. However, 2 of the actions were done when she was literally a child, and perhaps her father could have been better about noticing little things like the Goron's food supply literally being blocked by the man who tried to extort them. Bringing in Link to do her bidding could have been better monitored by Impa. Overall, though, I find these 2 actions of Zelda forgivable. Removing the Hero of Time from the timeline, however unintentional it might have been, is much harder to excuse. She literally tampered with the protective mechanism put in place by her gods to safeguard the land, as we would learn about in Skyward Sword. Realizing the error that she had made, she then took great efforts to try to fix the problems she had caused, and used what powers she had to restore that protection. Perhaps a little surprise to you watching. It is for this reason that I find Princess Zelda redeemable. Thank you for watching. And now that you know my outcome, I am eager to hear yours. Do you think Princess Zelda crossed some lines by going behind her father's back? Or do you think that even though her gambit failed, the ends justifies the means? Please let me know in the comments below. Now, if you have a moment, I'd like to mention my Patreon. With the start of 2023, and given that I've reached the 500 subscriber mark, I decided to start one up. As I'm sure you've heard from other content creators, making a living on YouTube can be challenging, and Patreon is often the stable backbone for creators. So I'm asking you all to help out if you can. All patrons will gain access to my Discord server, and higher tier patrons will be able to talk more directly with me. on upcoming topics and videos. There will also be polls for future topics, and every patron will be listed in my videos from here on out. More features to be added in the future. I'm still young here. With that out of the way, I have selected 2 videos that you might want to watch next. One where I talk in a bit more detail about the Great Flood, and a much larger one where I had a chat with fellow YouTubers about the timeline. Give them a watch, I think you will enjoy them. And with that, this is Cornelius Belmont, signing out.